I've had a number of business ideas that have been severely affected by recent events. Is now a crazy time to start a business? So it's always a crazy time to start a business. I think it's a funny thing to say or to think of, but I think it's really true. Because what you're looking for is just a nice conservative sense of safety and, again, the status quo being maintained and everything being balanced. Typically starting a business isn't the way you're going to achieve that, at least not in the short term. However, that doesn't mean it's not a brilliant idea. That's the thing. When we talk about the captain of the ship at sea and we think about their sailing, you could easily, at certain moments while out there at sea, think, well, why did I not just choose another job? Somewhere I could stay indoors in the office and I don't have to be out here in the wind and the rain and the elements. But another way of describing that is adventure. And to a certain degree, as human beings, we like a bit of adventure. We don't like boredom. And there's research that shows that given the option between boredom and pain, we will tend to choose pain, which is kind of interesting. So there is almost that inherent masochism there. Now, it's not really pain that we want. It's experience, it's stimulation. But the point is, we'll take it where we can get it if we don't have too many options. So in one of those experiments, they have something electrical there, and the person has the option of touching it. And they typically do in the experiment, just for the sake of not sitting there bored. Just having a bit of electrical current, mild, granted, running through them is something they'll typically prefer as a participant rather than just sitting there bored. So in that spirit, starting a business sometimes can meet that call to adventure, even if it can be a bit challenging at times. But of course, we're playing out the worst version here. It's not that it needs to be too crazy an adventure. And if it is too outside of those bounds, it's probably as well that we maybe plan it or design it in a way so that it isn't too traumatic an experience. So in terms of the timing of starting the business in the context of a global pandemic or any of these types of challenges, well, it may or may not be the right time right now. That is true to say. You're going to want to consider that. You're going to want to reflect on really what the business idea is, what your skill sets are, what the resources you have right now are. But then you're going to want to compare that to really what the need is right now that people have and their capacity to actually access what it is that you're trying to offer. So maybe think of it as two circles. One is the business, what it is you've got going on, and the other one is the context, the need, the people that are there, the needs they have in society, and the opportunity you have to actually reach them. Because you may have a situation where they really want it and you really want to serve them, but it's not practical because of public health reasons to be able to do it, at least at this point. So it may still be a fabulous idea, though, and it might be that this is the time to research it and develop it, but at a slightly later stage, that'll be the point then to really reach out and to make it either start the idea or at least scale the idea at that point. This could be a good kind of incubation period to be able to work on some of those ideas that can be useful. And I think there's a lot to that because there are going to be certainly a number of shifts psychologically and socially as we progress through current times and as we kind of come out the other end of current times. So a lot of the old ways of doing things might need to be rethought a bit. So there's a great opportunity for up-and-coming businesses, entrepreneurs, people who have their own ideas to really come in there and maybe do things a little bit differently and perhaps better than we used to do them before. You can see obvious examples of this in education, where of course, face-to-face contact and groups and all of that interaction is wonderful, and no doubt we'll want to bring that back as soon as possible. However, there are some fabulous advantages as well to sometimes remote connection or having videos or audio online or good notes or good technology assisting us with learning too. So what it's fairly easy to imagine now on the other side of this is much better hybrid models. So we've got kind of the best of both, really. So that's really, really good. And what typically happens is very often bigger organizations, if you're trying to start a small business or something you're running from home, you can be intimidated by some of the bigger operators that are out there. But not strictly always, but most of the time, what tends to happen is the bigger the ship is, the harder it is for it to turn. So people, big organizations, just their very infrastructure, it becomes clunky and it's hard for them to shift and adapt. So if you do have ideas, this could be a fabulous time to really kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's going on and what needs are currently and where they're going to be, and really then design around that so you're more agile in that way, rather than just having to do the same old thing that maybe has been going on for decades and is rather out of date at this stage. So that's exciting. So it may be that even if it isn't quite the moment, you can still see what's about to come next and just be ready for that. And that could be well worth investing your energy, your time, or your finances in if you're really identifying needs that are there. Of course, the other thing you can do is you can identify current needs and address them. So certainly a number of people I'm working with at the moment are in positions where, well, some of them are starting up new businesses or they're trying to adapt existing business ideas they had. But what other people are doing is they've got a business that's running, but they are trying to adapt and shift to current needs. So this, again, involves creativity. It involves being a bit clever. And hopefully that can be fun to some extent. It's easy, again, to kind of take it for granted. Okay, we have a way of meeting the needs of customers in a business and so on. But what actually makes the business exciting is to approach it fresh as often as possible and say, well, okay, that's the way I used to do it. That might be fine and well and good. But can I do that even better? Can I meet the needs of whoever I'm supporting even better? Can I serve people even better? And can I reimagine how I do it? Now, if you were to go back a few decades ago to think of remote communications and people having apps and people having wireless phones and any of these things would have seemed completely unimaginable. Yet here we are, and probably no harm given the circumstances that we're in at the moment from a public health perspective, because of course all these tools give us ways to carry on to some degree, albeit imperfect. But of course some of these methods are improving, and as I say, we'll probably integrate the in-person communication with the remote communication in kind of a more seamless way moving forward, so that it isn't as clunky as it's sometimes been in the past. But there are major needs, and that's really, I think, what every business needs to think of itself as, is a service business, a way of meeting needs that are there, of serving genuine needs that are there in society. So to the degree you can tune into those, use your imagination, and then say, well, what are ways I can meet these needs today that maybe we wouldn't have thought of a few years ago. And restraints, because the obvious problem here is, but it's very hard to do things because I can't do that and I can't do that and I can't do the other thing. And that is true in many cases. But there's still many things you can do. And if you think about technology, all of the technology that we have today, in principle, could have been developed in the Stone Age. There's no reason why in the Stone Age you couldn't have a mobile phone and make a call. We don't have anything more in the world. There's no more stuff in the world. There's just knowledge. There's just recognizing what the stuff that we currently have is capable of. And of course, granted, it does take a bit of time to then develop technologies to be able to mine and to be able to take these things and put them together in the right way. But we can see how the pace is rather quickening recently. With electricity, and suddenly we have a bunch of stuff over the last century that's been developed. Now, I'm not saying you need to develop quantum computing or to develop the next big technological innovation, but it can be simple innovations in service industries and how we meet the needs of people that are there, how we develop products. And sometimes what can happen is restraints can actually be very useful, because if I can't do that and I can't do that and I can't do that and I can't do that, that actually in a way makes it a bit easier for the imagination to say, well, what can I do? What are the functions and the capacities I have? What tools do I have to work with? So rather than your attention being too stretched, you can focus in on the current immediate needs, the capacities that you have, and you can be imaginative in the context of those restraints so they can work for you. So do have some fun with it, I think. Use that creativity. And whether you choose to launch now or later, still, the point is tuning into the needs that are there, recognizing what it is that you're about, where you're strongest, and seeing what magic can happen somewhere in that space. If you found this valuable, do like, subscribe, and share. And what's your experience? Do you have any questions or topic suggestions? You can contribute in the comments, on social media using #bodymindself, or on jfl.com.